started getting excited about Rapture once we had shown it in BioShock Infinite. And we started having that conversation about, oh, what if? And we've always wanted to see Rapture before the fall. What was it really like before all these bad things started to happen? And we created these systems in Infinite that would allow you to walk through Main Street and the fair and interact with these people. And so we had a bit of technology in place that would allow us to explore that. Quickly realized that everything that existed in Rapture was old and dilapidated, and we kind of had to go back to the drawing book a little bit on, well, what does Rapture really look like without having a civil war taking place and everything's broken down, broken windows and water everywhere, and really take a step back and think about how does this feel? Like, how airy is it? What are people doing? And how are people interacting with each other as they walk around? And it was good to kind of break out of that, what people are doing in Colombia and bringing some of that technology, though not necessarily the aesthetics, over to Rapture and start exploring that space.
When you look out the window in Burial at Sea, the Rapture you're seeing is a full three-dimensional. I'm not saying that it's like a walkable city where you can actually walk to those things, but they're built with 3D assets. Where in the original game, it's mostly just like 2D backdrops, and very cleverly, done 2D backdrops. But when you see the two side by side, it's quite striking, the difference. You can even see in the trailer we released, there's a lot of that big shot of the ocean outside. Those are all 3D elements, and I think we learned how to do that doing that sequence where you rise up in the bathysphere.
We wanted a new place for the player to explore, so looking at the library and looking back at old levels that we had, it's like we can't really use any of this stuff because everything was built to be broken and to have a patina on it and to be used, and these new objects that we're building have to be beautiful and chrome and big bold statements that don't have the patina on, are taken care of every day and are very much part of a living city. We could use some of the underlying shapes and ideas that we had in BioShock 1, but really had to translate them into new areas and relearning what Art Deco really means, and not getting too noodly with tiny shapes, really thinking big and bold.
With Columbia, everything was open air, and you felt, if you went down a side corridor or something like that, you felt quite threatened. Whereas in Rapture, if you suddenly find yourself in a slightly more open area, you feel exposed. You want to be hiding in the shadows and keeping out of sight because you don't know what's going to be around the next corner. So I feel that they have very much a different tonal flavor in terms of game, in terms of oppression, in terms of the sort of taste of the world that you have about it.
BioShock 1 is about Rapture, really, and Infinite's about the characters. And I put this very much in the place of being about the characters, still about being about Booker and Elizabeth. And that's not to say we don't wring the environment for all it's worth, for every ounce of coolness we can get out of it. But the whole point of Infinite was moving on to tell a story about characters. That doesn't mean we have to back away from making that backdrop great, but it's definitely Booker and Elizabeth.
For BioShock 1, Rapture was the main character. For Infinite, I will say that Elizabeth is the main character. Now we have our two leading ladies, playing opposite each other. And we get to see how both react to the other. Liz will adapt to Rapture. She'll have to change some of the things that she would normally do. She has her secrets, and I think that Rapture does too. And both of them are going to have to reveal their secrets to each other.
Elizabeth's presence really is a defining factor as far as tying these two areas together, and that relationship comes out again. The back and forth banter between Booker and Elizabeth, and the way that she reacts to the world. Although this way it's a little different. She's not wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, fresh out of the tower, Liz. She's different this time around. But some of their interactions are definitely will feel familiar to those who have gone through Infinite. But again, we're telling a different story. So even though the underlying technology and the underlying voices are still the same, and the actress is still the same, the actual story that we're telling is going to be different. So it's a weird combination of it's the same but different. But I do think the presence of Elizabeth definitely helps tie that together.
Immediately start with questions, and we always want to start with questions, not that people don't know the answers to, not that the ones they do know the answers to, because that's always more interesting. And this is one of those great cases of having your cake and eating it too, because you also get to have that backdrop. Having the technology, having done Infinite, to sort of do civilians walking around and talking to each other and having that kind of population was exciting because we never could show that in Rapture before. It was always the dead city. And one of the things I'm most excited for in the first DLC is that the first half of it has no combat. It's just playing in that world, the Rapture you'd never really seen before, and watching Booker and Elizabeth use their wits to solve a problem and just soak in the atmosphere.